All right, everybody. Welcome to the newest episode of the Jay Davis Show. It's been a minute coming back, and wanted to start it off with a heavy hitter.
No,
Uh, so that's Tyler. I want to introduce my good friend Tyler Howells, amazing entrepreneur, great human being. So thank you for coming on, Tyler, and being my comeback guest.
oh, thanks, Jay. It's an honor. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, why don't you give everybody just like a rundown on how did you get started as an entrepreneur? What's kind of your background? And tell us more about Cozy Earth.
Sure. I graduated college. I was always kind of interested in creative things growing up, and I think like you know, I started Cozy Earth not shortly after college, a few years after college, but before that, just growing up, I was always interested in music and writing songs and like putting that whole thing together, and I really loved it as a creative outlet. I was an English major in college and enjoyed the arts and all these kinds of great things. But trying to figure out what I wanted to do for work, it was kind of funny. Like business didn't immediately was kind of a non sequitur. It didn't connect immediately
Yeah.
for a lot of people. Who are like, why are you studying English? But as I was doing it, I also had a chance to go out and serve a mission for my church, speaking Mandarin Chinese. I learned Chinese, so fluency in Chinese made me excited to try to learn and use that, going forward, so I wouldn't lose it. So it kind of all came together once I was back at university. I was trying to see kind of what I could do. I was reading some books and getting inspired about entrepreneurship and about what could be done there. And I thought, man, this is very creative. This is something that I could try to do while I go to school. And so I started working on just some ideas. And when I first started, I had a friend who was working in construction. He was with a builder, a developer, who was looking for just hardwood flooring for some of the projects that they were working on. He asked me if I thought I could maybe find a good source for them and find something that was like, unique. And so I just said, why not? I got nothing going on, just going to school and hanging out with my friends. So night after night, I just worked on honing my skills of kind of reaching out to factories and seeing what was there. I ended up traveling over there several times, and I realized there's just a lot to it. Long story short, though, I don't know how much details you want. I kind of 2008 rolled around, and I hadn't graduated yet, but the housing market crashed pretty hard. And so I thought, well, I can at least employ some of these skills that I learned maybe in some other areas of business, and just started working on different ideas. And I'd always been like a fabric snob since I was a kid. My mom always gives me a hard time about it because she'd give me certain like clothing that I would say was too scratchy. It wasn't soft enough. And I'd gotten really good at working with factories, not just in China, but just overseas in general, and getting them to make unique things that were really high quality. And I just got obsessed with some textile I found there that was made from bamboo. It wasn't that great, to be honest. It's kind of like cotton. It's not all created equal. And I started working super hard on kind of creating the perfect sheet set, bed linen set, just something that I would love and that my wife would love and our family would love. So I worked on that and I created it, and we made it even better over the years. But that kind of got us our start. And since then, we've expanded into many other categories. Apparel is another big category for us. And we're doing everything from skincare to footwear, furniture, and clothing, and towels and linens. So we kind of a whole lifestyle brand, and that's Cozy Earth story.
Dude, I love it. Well, I love that you didn't immediately start as an entrepreneur. I think I'm very similar in that, like, I hear other people tell these stories of like, selling things door to door as a 4-year-old. And I'm like, yeah, that was not me. I did not jump into it that quick. It was after the mission, after college or during college, where I started to kind of get into it. And so what would you say for someone who maybe is similar, like who didn't, hasn't always been an entrepreneur, or maybe has been interested but has never done it? Like, what would you recommend for them to do?
I always try to go back to, core competencies, but also like not in the sense that stuff that you're just competent in that you already have skills in, but things that you seem to excel at, and kind of go down that way. I don't have any bias towards, what product I make or don't make. And in our business, you as well, we do products, so versus like, you have 10 businesses going, but I'm mostly just a product based business. So I focus on stuff that I'm passionate about, that I really am excited about, and that I feel like can make a big difference. So I always tell people, one, kind of take personal inventory of what you're most passionate about, what you think needs change, and then I would also look for a problem that you can solve. If there's no, if it's just something you like and your family likes and your friends like, that's one thing. But if it's a common issue that touches a very large part of the market, and your product provides a solution for that, and can do so with not just your aunt and uncle saying it's nice, and people that that want to impress you or make you feel good, but average person could say, wow, that does make a difference. That is something that's an improvement or a solution to my problem. I think you're onto something there. I think that's where I would start as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a great approach to it, because I think a lot of times people just see someone like you and they're like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur like him. And it's like, well, do you speak Mandarin? And, do you have these specific skills that kind of allow you to be the entrepreneur that you are? And it's much better to try and create your own identity than copying.
Oh man,
other
yeah.
people.
The copying is the worst. It's a surefire way to have like a short term, experience in entrepreneurship. I mean, on the one hand, you've probably ran into this too, Jay. Is like there's people who are just chasing the dollar,
Yeah.
and they're trying to like, it's a different type of entrepreneurship, if you will. You're definitely still trying to get it going, but it's similar to door-to-door sales versus actually building, a model and something that can be iterated on and scaled and bring a lot of good to your community, your family, other families that work with you, versus like going out and trying to figure out a quick fix to put some money in your pocket. I don't at all relate to that. For me, the whole, experience for me was like, whoa, this is something that's going to have my name on it and my reputation. And it's something that's going to be a reflection of my efforts. So I want to make sure I'm putting my best foot forward. And the thing that we build is something that we're all really proud of,
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people, it's like, if you want to make a lot of money, entrepreneurship's not the best idea. You got to do it because you just freaking love it. Like, I think that's, I think from the first time we met and started hanging out, I just could tell you were kind of a kindred spirit in that way, where you're like, you would do this for free.
Right.
Even if you didn't make money, but you're so great at it that you've been really successful. And so I think that comes from it's this like weird paradox of like, focus on doing something that impacts people and changes their life and is a phenomenal product that they'll pay for. And then the success kind of follows that. So what do you think, like, where do you think e-com is at right now? I think a lot of people are kind of wondering. I mean, you guys have expanded beyond e-com, but like, what do you think the state of e-com is right now? Where do you think it's headed? What are some of your Twitter thoughts that you're sharing with the world?
I've seen you on there, dude. I've been trying to be more active, participating in the conversation a little bit, just because I realized on X, for example, there are good entrepreneurs out there that are trying to keep the conversation going, trying to help, trying to kind of add their voice to the mix. I don't think anyone cares about, me right now, but I'm like, might as well just put, it's a value thing, right? You just want to kind of like help out and participate. And also I'm getting good information and tips and stuff as I go along. So I'm like, I might as well just put $1 in the till kind of thing. But what I'm seeing is it reminds me, because I got to start. I don't recall when you got your start, Jay. I know it was early on because with Color Run and stuff like that. But for me, I was kind of the same thing. Like I started in 2007, 8, started working on this like entrepreneurial stuff. Probably 7.
Yeah, me too.
And it was like a totally different world. We're talking about AI now, but back then the internet in this regard, like D2C, wasn't even a thing.
Yeah. Right?
I mean, Amazon hadn't even popped off at this stage. It was kind of selling books a little bit, and it wasn't doing nearly what it's doing today. So having a brand that could sell direct to the consumer was a not a concept that you could really do at that stage. And so what I was doing was really trying to appeal to actual customers one-on-one. I would go to the old-fashioned trade show, and I would talk about my products and try to stop people from walking and hand it to them and put it in their hand. And what I realized at those shows is the same thing I'm realizing today in e-com. It's the 80-20 rule, like 20% of the companies at these trade shows, if you're lucky, it might be less, man. It might be 5 or 8%, are actually having a good show.
Yeah.
And the rest of them are having an even break-even show or a really bad one. And so you'll hear a lot of negativity. When you go to these trade shows, it would be just like the physical version of social media. You'd have these people just like horrible attitudes, how's the show going for you? What's this? What's that? And what we would do is we would say any person who walked by the booth, we had to at least try to talk to them and try to put the product in their hands. And we would look around, and the people who are having the bad shows, lo and behold, everyone else is just literally sitting there waiting for the customer to come to them versus actually trying to work it as hard as they can absolutely work it. And so I'm not saying that on the one hand, you have to have a great product that really does resonate. But on the other hand, you have to work it. Like you cannot, like your life depends on it, like most entrepreneurs, right? And so those two components together are so important. And as I see e-commerce today, eventually we got to D2C. We started running the ads and doing really well online, direct to the consumer. And now we're branching out into wholesale and our own stores. And as I'm looking at this, I'm like, yeah, it's never been easy for us. There's been times where growth has come, faster at different levels of the business, but we're still growing. And then I look around and I say, okay, well, how bad is it out there? Even internally here with our own team, sometimes they'll get some of that contagion where it's like there's so much negativity out there that there's no sales to be had, or there's people, or CAC's broken, or you've got ads that aren't working well. And it's a thing, it's challenging, but what's making it so challenging is it's just not staying the same. It's constantly evolving, changing around. So my ultimate take is, on the one hand, we could talk about trade and stuff is a different topic, but advertising, mining customers out of Meta and Google is very difficult, right? I think that's proven. I think it's more, when it first started, it was less expensive in 2014, 15, 16, maybe up to 18. And it's gotten more expensive because obviously digital marketing companies like Facebook, Meta, and Google have figured out a way to ratchet out as much profit for themselves as possible, right? They take that margin that you were enjoying at the beginning when they first introduced advertising to where they can get the absolute amount out of it, and probably optimizing towards the law of diminishing returns, where they can squeeze all of us as hard as they can to where they get the most out of what they need without completely tanking enough growth that continues to allow their bottom and top lines to move up. And I think that what that's forced us to do as brand founders and CEOs is to say, well, how do we iterate? What products do we come out with next? How do we keep their attention? What content do we need to be providing? How do we sell the product? What's our creative look like? We have to go really in with a fine tooth comb and work our businesses. So we can't just turn them on and go hit the golf course. So that's kind of where we're at. Cozy Earth, we're still enjoying success and growing, which has been awesome, and we feel so blessed and lucky to do that. But at the same time, we're working super hard. Our whole team is working super hard on constantly trying to innovate and evolve as these things get more challenging.
Yeah.
What do you guys?
No, I think one of the things you said, I think this again goes back to why you have to love it, because it's it's solving problems, it's coming up with new things, it's innovating, focusing on kind of the core things that drive growth, and I think that's where it definitely filters out people who are like, I was just trying to do this for like a easy win. I thought this was like a gold rush, and it's
Right.
always the people who make it through that time. So I think we're definitely seeing a filtering that's happening. That a lot of people are like, I've talked to a lot of people and respect them. I think they're awesome, but they're like, this isn't for me. I was making more money at my job, and I started to do this, and I'm making less money, working harder, more stressed, and so again, that's where I think that, like you said, that passion. But no, I think that's my personal feeling is there's always these waves. Like I think we saw that wave with Meta, and it was like this huge growth opportunity. There were so many things happening, and then as that happens, like you said, there's just going to be diminishing law, or the law of diminishing returns is going to kick in, and all of a sudden you're not going to be making it, and we're going to invent something that, like, I think it's already being invented. There's new ways to connect with customers. There's new ways of talking to people. Because I remember a time, I right after I graduated, I remember talking to my boss, and we were talking about Facebook. This was probably 08, 09. And he's like, he was saying that Facebook just got like some crazy, like 30, 40, $50 billion valuation or $10 billion valuation. And it was like, and they weren't making any money. I was like, what in the world? Like, why would they be worth
no
that?
way to monetize, right?
Yeah. I mean, even when I went to Color Run, like, I remember when I went to Color Run, and we were launching that, like, you got likes on your page. That was really the only way to like connect with your community. So we were one of the groups that got to 1 million likes. Like, I think at the time we got to 1 million likes faster than anyone ever had.
Wow.
And all of a sudden we're like, connecting with people, and we're getting 2 million likes. Then all of a sudden Facebook's like, hey, you got to pay to reach those people now. And we were like, what are you talking about?
This.
Like, we just got all these likes. We paid to get all these likes. We have to pay you now to engage with them. And they're like, yeah, you got to. And so we started boosting posts and that whole thing. But at the time you were posting videos from YouTube into Facebook. Like, Facebook didn't have native video. And so I think that's just like kind of the lesson I think I've learned. I think you've learned. We've talked about it. It's just always changing. And you got to constantly be adapting, and kind of thinking about like, okay, what's my existing model? And then, what's going to change, what's going to happen. And my personal feeling is I think TikTok is kind of in that moment right now where like we're adapting to it. We're realizing, hey, it's completely own platform. It's even though it's video, just like Instagram or just like Facebook, it's a different thing. And so I think we're going to see some of these new platforms. We're looking at a couple other ones that are really interesting, where there's like ways to engage with people in a unique way. Yeah. I think we'll just keep seeing that happen. And so that's where you just have to, my feeling is always like, make a product that no matter what, people love, because that seems to be the driving factor. Your guys' products are amazing. I remember as a kid I was very similar. I had like a thing with fabrics and tags, and I was highly sensitive to a lot of those things. And then I remember like trying your sheets for the first time. I was like, oh, you can just buy great sheets. Like as a kid, I was always like, no, you buy sheets and then you wash them 3,000 times, and they become great sheets after 3,000 washes. But yeah, like I think if you make a great product and then you tell stories that people are interested in, and just help people solve their problems with your product, those things are the tactics change, and you got to get used to it. I think tactics are going to get even crazier. Like I think in a year from now, there will be a AdSense like platform that is in ChatGPT and in Claude and in XAI. Like, you will just pay to advertise in ChatGPT because people are all switching. Like, I'm using ChatGPT now how I used Google 3 years ago.
Right. Google is 1% of my usage at this stage.
Yeah.
Where my entire business was built on Google. Me teaching myself everything I needed to know. Even YouTube, is like a huge thing. And now it's been replaced with, AI podcasts, right? Are good, great. Like your great podcasts are great sources of information. But it's like these AI, tools are answer engines. They're not search engines. So really it's ignorance to use any other tool at this stage, and you have to believe they're going to monetize the heck out of that and help
Yeah.
you, make your buying decisions, which is exciting because that's what happened with Facebook, right? I mean, when that thing first popped out, it was like the Wild West. They're just like, just please advertise on this platform and see what happens. And at first, measurement wasn't great.
Yeah.
Like you said, you had to promote likes. I remember that you had to promote just to get likes on your page so that the algorithm would pop it to the top of the news feed on Facebook. And it's like, it wasn't like you're getting like calculable ROI. You were
Yeah.
just kind of like, hey, stuff's happening. It's not happening. You're going to probably see, that in these tools. And I'm sure it's scaring the pants off of people at Meta, right? Because it's like they have this proprietary ad platform that's so good in comparison to all of its counterparts. But I can easily envision, AI with all that data shared with it doing a much better job as long as you could, measure it properly. So it'll be interesting. I think that early adopters, right, they get rewarded with, lower costs typically.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I almost feel like in some ways social media was so great for so long, and it was so great at marketing to customers that it made us all lazy, and we kind of got complacent with like, man, you just like pay and you get a customer. It's like pay $20, get a customer for $80. And I think that's usually, TV was probably similar. Like when TV first started going crazy, you read some of those books from those admin, it's just like shooting fish in a barrel. It was like people are just sitting in front of their TV every night for 3 hours because there's nothing better that's ever been done. And, radio was probably the same. And then over time, it like, some new technology comes in. I think things are accelerating and we're going faster and faster and faster. And so that's what I think will happen is I think in a year from now, most of our ad spend will be in AI platforms. I think that's where we'll all be, and in many ways it'll be great because it'll also help avoid scams. It'll help avoid knockoff products that are crappy. Like, hey, this person, community notes kind of style where it's like, yeah, this product actually, most people report that when they get it, it's just a box of, other stuff that's not
Junk.
even that wasn't even advertised. So
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I didn't think about it that way. Like, reducing on some fraud and kind of the bait and switch kind of thing.
yeah,
But yeah, it is endemic to like social media. I think it'll be interesting to see how right now it's just text, right? Like it's a blank page, and we'll probably laugh at that 5 years from now. We'll be like, can you remember when it was just like it just gave you the answer and you didn't have to sift through any ad, But that's the opportunity there is those kinds of things, and at least from our standpoint, right? Everyone else is trying to solve diseases. We're trying to sell wonderful products, but you hope that it's figured out sooner than later.
Yeah. No, I would guess that's where the shift will happen. Like that's my thinking is I think here real soon we'll have these ad platforms on AI where you'll just be able to pay for, I want you to mention Pillow Cube and here's why, or I want you to mention Cozy Earth and here's why. And I think it's going to totally shift things. I think social media will continue. And what I've noticed, I think something interesting is like during that social media time, some of those old ways of advertising had kind of a little moment of resurgence where it's like, everyone leaves magazines and all of a sudden magazines are pretty good because there's still people reading them. There's still people who are older who are still stuck in their habits. And they're like, I still, Costco Connection is still one of the most read magazines on the earth. Like that's crazy to me.
That is crazy.
So I think that's what's going to be interesting to see where it goes and see where it heads.
It'll be fascinating to see what happens to Google. I mean, right now it's just like throw up on the page. You know what I mean? It's like a big mess. When you search something, it's like it's having a fight with itself. Do we want to give them the answer, or do we want to be unique?
Yeah. Well, and seeing, like, I just read an article recently that like people are saying that the AI part for Google is kind of messing everything up because it's not integrated with AdSense. And so the people who are paying for AdSense are like, why am I paying? Because now my sponsored ad or my organic content is now stuck below this huge block of AI explanation. And how do I get access to that? That's like the prime explanation. And so, when it's so, I'm sure it's already happening. Like, there's no way that these guys are not realizing that you got to bring ad platforms into AI. So, yeah, I think that's what's fascinating. And again, I think it goes back to, like, master your craft. If you're an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
do it because you love it and you want to be great at it. And yeah,
You wonder how much like SEO will come back, like, I don't know
yeah,
what you call it, AI engine optimization, right?
yeah,
Like essentially like, trying to figure out which keywords would rank to give the right answer through the platform, is probably going to be a thing,
yeah. We
like with organic results. And you'd have to figure out how to, you know, how to get your stuff out there. And it's like,
yeah,
where's it going to search? And I think that's probably where all this content, like you're probably hearing what I'm hearing from Meta and everybody. It's just like, make more content,
yeah,
more videos, more everything, right?
yeah.
And so all of that's probably going to feed the beast, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm shocked sometimes, like, I forget, like, I'll be like, hey, can you help me with this for my business? And it's like, oh yeah, this one. And you're like, I forgot you knew that. Like, it's weird when you have these moments where it's like, hey, can you help me with this thing with my wife? And it's like, Haley. And I'm like, oh yeah. Like, and think about that from a product recommendation standpoint. Like, as we start to integrate more and more data and it knows more about us. I was even saying, me and Josh, who's our head of brand, we were joking at lunch today that, like, pretty soon we were laughing about how we get those. Do you get those, like, executive workout ads?
I've seen like in my feed, like it show up a guy like,
Yeah,
are you 40 and and a dad
yeah,
trying to work
yeah,
out? I'm like, wait, hang on, leave me alone.
yeah. You're like, are you busy executive who
Yes.
isn't yeah, like, I was like, in like a year, those are going to be like referencing what you bought for lunch. They're going
Mhm.
to be referencing, like, hey, I know you do this and you work here and you ate a donut last night at 9:45. Like, that's all just gonna, it's where we're headed. And buddy, like, as an entrepreneur, that opens some very interesting things of, hey, I know you were talking about this last night, or this, or I know you were snoring last night. You need to get that fixed. So it's very interesting to see kind of what that world opens up. So, anyways,
So
um,
wild.
yeah, it's going to be super interesting. If you could go back in time to 2007, Tyler, and you could only tell yourself one thing related to normal life and one thing related to business, what are the two things you would say? What are those, like, two tips you would give yourself?
That's a good question. I got to think about that one. So, personal life, like outside of business, and then in the business life. I think in the
Yeah.
business life, it's, I think having a little more confidence in your ability to just go for it and stand out there, put yourself out there sooner. I
Yeah.
think that for me, like when I first started, and I think that a lot of entrepreneurs I run into, or people that would be wanting to be entrepreneurs, are like, where do you start? And I always say, just start, just go. Like,
Yeah.
what are you working on? Okay, tonight, like right now, go home and just start writing it down and start
Yeah.
working on it. But then there's a second component to that, to where it's like putting yourself in front of the right people and really asking for investment or asking for advice, or networking with other entrepreneurs. Like, I always admired people who can do that naturally, and for me, I was always kind of like, am I ready? Am I okay to be a part of this club?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
it's more of a shyness factor. And I think that probably would have benefited, and Cozy Earth probably would have grown a little faster in the early days had I just been a little more out there, rather than just keeping my head down, just trying to sell
Yeah.
one product after the next. So that's one thing that just comes to mind. There's probably a lot more. I
Yeah.
think personally, it's take care of yourself. Like there's a lot of things, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. When you do this as a job, there's a few jobs like this, but it really comes at a personal cost in terms of like stress
Yeah.
and your health
Yeah.
overall. Like you don't go to the doctor when you should. You don't like
Or ever.
exercise. Like just you forget to eat meals. You don't sleep. So
Yeah.
it's like you literally, if you're doing it um, all in, right? Then you it's easy to kind of lose. And people always conflate that with like you need a vacation. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like eat. Like I'm talking
Yeah.
about go to sleep. Don't get 2 hours, 4 hours of sleep. 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
Like it's more extreme stuff. That I
Yeah.
wish that I would have chilled out on a little more. Because you pay for it later on. You got to kind of catch up. So I think taking care of your health is an important one. And that sounds
Yeah.
a little extreme, but that's the thing for me.
No, I think it's like a combination of kind of like entrepreneurs have this insane ability to like just believe that they can do anything. But sometimes that is like, oh, I'm fine. Like, I'll just figure
Yeah,
it out. I'll walk it off.
exactly.
And you're like, you should probably, Haley has to be like, we have insurance now, right? Like,
I
we
know.
have really good insurance. You're not the
Yeah,
first year in your career when you were like, didn't have insurance and
yeah.
oh man, it's so funny.
Same here. It's same here. It's like, why don't you take a day off, or why don't you do? It's like you're like, oh, okay, I
Yeah.
probably should. And it's it's not a badge of honor. And I didn't see it that way. I just saw it as like a necessity. Like no one's going to work as hard as I'm going to work. But when you're not feeling good, or you've got my shoulders messed up, or something in my back, or whatever it might be, it's like you can spare 30 minutes to do something for yourself. In terms of
Yeah.
these health things.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good point. And I think your point about just getting out there.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think that most entrepreneurs kind of go into one of those two camps. They're either very willing to get in front of other people, or they're kind of a little more on the other side. I'm definitely more on the same side as you. Like, I was always nervous to like pitch people and just be like, hey, do you want to help me? Do you want to assist me? So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then you see guys go out like this guy I know is in private equity, and all he did was sit and listen to pitches all day long, right? For a handful of years, and then he goes to start his business, and all he does is go pitch everybody immediately. Like that's the first thing he does, and lo and behold, money just starts come pouring in like day one, and everyone's like, "Yeah, we're gonna help you," and you're like,
Yeah.
"Wait a minute, is that how it works?" Like you just walk out there and because it's a
Yeah.
totally different paradigm, right? As when you're starting out from zero and you don't have that experience, you assume that there's some rocket science around getting your idea out and having people, back your idea early.
Yeah.
But that's a big part of it. I know, when our business, you begin to think, you start to think, I can grab a product, start working it, and then kind of work through um, reinvest the profit that you can get out of it. But you realize really quick with what we do, it's like the profits don't come easy at all.
Yeah.
So you really need all the help and support you can get, but you don't want to, obviously you don't want to bring on bad partners, but
Yeah.
that's another story.
Well, maybe that's the next question. What have you learned about working with people? And I think to preface this, I think that's one of the things that I've noticed is like, just as time goes on, things become easier because you learn, and
Yeah.
a lot of that is paid for dearly with blood, sweat, tears, horrible experiences, all that stuff. But like, what have you now learned about partners? We've shared horror stories and war stories, but like, what are some of those lessons you've learned?
Yeah. Without putting anybody on blast, uh, I've got, the longer you do anything, right, the more people change in the
Yeah.
same time period. So, whenever you meet someone right out the gate, your best friend, or I haven't had that issue, but, whoever you start your business with, the first investor, whatever, everybody runs out of patience. Everybody, goes through their own changes. There's somebody will go get a divorce, or something will happen in their personal life that'll be different. And so anytime you're
Yeah.
introducing time in the equation, you have to understand that like it's not going to, just like we talked about with e-commerce, it's not going to stay stagnant. It's going to be dynamic. It's going to be a changing situation. So you really have to firmly put down your principles of what you're doing. Like, what are we building here and why? If I'm here because of these reasons, and the reason can't just be to put money in both of our pockets, because it's not enough. It won't
Yeah.
keep people together. I mean, look at the greatest bands in the world. They break up, making millions and millions of dollars. They break up because they can't stand sitting in the same private jet together,
It's true. So
So,
true.
so you have to have a why and a principle of what you're doing, because that's going to stand the test of time if it needs to. You'll run into, I'm sure you've ran into one or two entrepreneurs who've been at it for 5 years or 3 years or 6, and they had a blowout like timing situation where they just started the business, it went up like this, and then they exited the company. And they're the omniscient, all-knowing God in entrepreneurship.
Yep.
They're like, trust me, like this, it's not that hard, guys.
You just raise money and then you sell it like 3 years later. This is
exactly,
easy.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's super easy. And they didn't have that time component where they went through the swalls and they got through, bull crap together.
Yeah.
So like they don't have those same feelings. So my feeling is like always take the long view. Those are the exceptions. Everyone always thinks they're going to be the exception, but usually you're not. If you're had a successful business, you are the exception. If the company is profitable and you've created a company that's scaled or scaling, you are successful. But in that component, like in that subset of people, the cohort of people who have been able to quickly flip things and get in and out of them like that, I'm almost, you more power to them. But at the same time, they don't have the experience to do it again.
Yeah.
They don't have it. They don't have the experience like to necessarily. I would be nervous as an investor. Like if they came to me and said, "I just sold this business for $1 billion after 3 years," I would be very nervous to give them any investment to do it again, right? Because that they haven't been through these other things. So that goes to partners, right? Your question, I'm giving you a long answer, but the question about partners is like, you have to understand if your principles are set right and your reasons for doing it are long-term and long view, no one can really argue with that over the course of the venture. So like, if you keep saying to people, hey, my goal here is to build, in Cozy Earth's terms, right? Our goal is to build a truly life-changing lifestyle brand that helps people in their lives and their families, helps them feel more comfortable, more safe, more luxurious, more rested, more of the good things in life, right? And the people who work here are helping us put that kind of magic sauce together to help bring that to people's lives, right? And we're here for the long haul. We're here for them. And that we think that that's a worthy thing that puts good things into the world. And we'll do whatever it takes to make sure that the company exists, grows, and innovates in a way that just surprises and delights people all over the world. When you say that and you believe it, right? Anyone that has any other view, hey, I'm here to sell the business in 3 years and to go to build my house in Cabo. It's like my argument wins every time, because ours is bringing true value that everyone else can subscribe to. And it's true. It's more true than, hey, we're just going to quickly hire a bunch of people, give them a job, sell the thing off, break it off into pieces, and they'll find their next job and it'll be great. It's like you usually win any kind of strife or argument that comes forth later on when people change and their values change or their true colors show. Yeah. And so that's the only thing I can say is like, if you have kind of your flag in the sand and it's got good intentions behind it and you're trying your best to put it there, I think you can persevere through any obstacles you're inevitably going to run into over a longer period of time with partners or investors or even employees.
Yeah. And that's nothing against Baja. We all know we love Baja.
We love Baja. Yeah.
No, I think that's the, um, yeah, it's one of the big lessons from my entrepreneurial experience. I can even tell, investors and partners how I pitched them based on the expectations they reflect back to me.
Mm.
Like I can talk to an investor and the things they're focused on asking me about, I'm like, man, I must have been talking about a quick win when I pitched you, because that's all they want to talk about. It's like, when are we going to sell? How much money am I going to make? Oh,
Hmm.
wow, I'm going to be rich. And you're like, can you focus on the bigger picture here? But
Yeah.
that's a reflection back on me of like, man, I must have fed into that. And it's a lot of this is just constantly resetting expectations, helping people to realign. But I totally agree with you. Like I always tell, I think anyone who hired young people has had this experience where you, like, 2 years in, you have to sit them down and be like, dude, you've got a 40-year career,
Yeah.
like maybe 42, 43 years.
Yeah.
If you served a mission in your LDS, a little less, but
Yeah.
but like, it's shocking how many of those people I sit down with, and you have a younger employee who comes in, and 2 years in, they're just like, I got to do this and I got to get here, and I got 1 year to do it. And you're like, dude, it's a 40-year career. I'm not even halfway yet. I feel like I'm finally getting to the point where I'm like, I'm mediocre. I'm like, I'm okay. I'm like, all right. But if you asked me 15 years ago, I thought I knew everything, because that's how young people are, and that's not bad. I think sometimes that gives you some bravado. That's great. But I notice that I have to do that with a lot of younger employees and people, where it's like, hey, the plan is to do this for our whole life because we love it.
Yeah.
It's not to get a 2-year quick win, because exactly like you said, I've met so many people that I think, and I'm sure you've had this experience, where you meet people who are kind of like your heroes,
Hmm.
and then you get to know them better, and you find out their insecurities. I've met a lot of entrepreneurs who've had huge wins, massive wins, and they're insecure because they're wondering if they could do it twice. I'm like, dude, you built a company for 25 years and sold it for $20 billion. Like, why are you insecure? And they're like, yeah, but I didn't do it twice. You're
Yeah.
like, what? But
Yeah. There's always
that's
that
life.
extra mountain to climb. And
Yeah.
I always think again, like if you're anxiously engaged, right, and you're trying to work hard at something that matters, the rest of the stuff all falls into place. And and then the next question for everybody is like, hey, when are you going to exit? Like, what's your exit strategy? Kind of what's the plan here? And I think it's funny because so much of it you don't really control.
Yeah.
To you can talk about, there's a very clear exit strategy, right? Like for everyone, it's like there's certain ways to like sell your company or get new investment, or there's different ways to do that, but it should happen organically at the right time. If it's not happening like at the right time, you're not going to maximize your valuation for all the things that you've built. You also probably aren't going to put the people who helped you get there in the best position possible to succeed after. So
Yeah.
you really have to, like, when you're building these things, I think, just don't sit around picking the paint out for your new boat. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just work, and enjoy it and love it and be grateful that you have it, and try to build something really great that matters. And that's the ultimate competitive advantage.
Yeah.
Everyone else is going to be looking at your taillights, trying to emulate and produce what you're doing. And meanwhile, you're just having a good time, painting the way you paint, and no one else can.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to your comment about the personal balance, or don't forget to take care of yourself personally, because and that is kind of the two-sided coin, I would almost say, is like, because you love it, you kind of sacrifice a lot. It's not super hard to sacrifice health and time and relationships, because you're like, I'm not doing this because of any other reason besides the fact that I freaking love it. I love building, I love creating, I love developing new things. And so I think that's almost the flip side. You have other people who it's like, I got to push myself to go to work. I got to push myself. Sunday rolls around and I'm dreading Monday. And I'm like, dude, I love Monday. Like, I can't wait to get back to work and accomplish new things and work with the team and do all that stuff. And that's not to say there's definitely Sundays where I'm like, oh, I'm tired. I need an extra
Yeah.
day. But for the most part, like the vast majority of the time, I love it.
I love getting back in. And yeah,
So
it's the best feeling ever. That's the dopamine, man. And that's what we should be grateful for sure.
So awesome. Well, any parting words of wisdom? Anything you wish you had shared or wanted to say to the
No, I mean, this has been a
seven
fun, it's been
listeners?
a fun conversation. And no, I just want to, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the, we haven't talked about politics, but there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the world right now, right? You have
Yeah.
wars going on. I just found out that India, fired missiles into Pakistan a few hours ago, and
Oh wow.
yeah, so it's like there's some pretty gnarly stuff going on, and then there's the tariffs and like the rebalancing of global trade and all this kind of stuff. And I think my biggest thing is just give it gas. My big thing is just encouragement to everybody out there. I think we're gonna make it through okay.
Yeah.
I think everything's gonna be fine. But be prepared. Like everything that we do. You were a Boy Scout, Jay.
Yeah. I'm an
But
Eagle
the
Scout.
Scout motto, right? Be prepared. So learn AI. Use all you have to do is ask AI how to learn it, and it will
Yeah.
tell you. And it's like learn. If you don't know where to start on AI and start asking it questions about itself and how to use it, best leverage it for what you do. That would be my number one. And number two is be prepared for things that might come down, and build your companies and your ideas and your dreams and the companies that you work for with that purpose. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I maybe you were the one who did you recommend the book to me about how tech is always deflationary?
No.
Oh, okay. Here, let me find. Oh, I remember who it was. Cole. Shout out to Cole who recommended this book to me.
I'll have to check it out.
It is called The Price of Tomorrow.
Okay.
But he's saying that tech is always deflationary, and it always it just always maximizes, it always multiplies, it always makes things go faster. And so I think we're going to see a continuation of extremes where I look at what me and two other people can do. It's like that used to take 40 people. Now the three of us can build a brand, build product, design stuff, develop stuff, pitch stuff. Like we can do it so much faster. It's insane. And so that's going to happen. It's going to create tons of opportunity, a lot of excitement, but there's also going to be, you look at other technological, what happened with the internet and what that did to a lot of America. Created massive opportunities, more billionaires than ever, but you also have middle America that's now kind of deserted because it's like they couldn't adapt fast enough, which is hard. That's the challenge. It's the human part of technology that's pretty tough.
Right. And it's the same thing. I mean, now you've got people have choices that they can make right now to adopt and to adapt, or to just kind of go Palm Pilot or email only and say, hey, I'm not going to learn this new technology. And they're making it's pretty great. I mean, it's impressive. Like you said, it's doing things. And I'm honestly believe it's not just making us more efficient in terms of displacing jobs, but it's allowing us to do things that we would never have time or resources to do.
Yeah.
So that's the exciting part of it. And it's fun because we have a ton of data that we can just, put to work and try to see how we can be better and get more information and serve our customers better. So it's an exciting time. It's fun, wild, but exciting.
Wild, but exciting. I think that's a good description. What do you think about tariffs and trade? What's kind of your thinking approach?
I think if we're just being honest, it can't last more than 90 days.
Yeah.
And I think we're about 30 days into that 90 days. So let's give it another 60 days. I think that I'm hearing stuff. I'm sure you watch it like a hawk, like I do. I'm hearing that this week as soon as this week, there might be some announcements regarding deals done. I
Yeah.
think what's going to happen is, if we're just talking tariffs, I think what's going to happen is they're going to announce some deals with friendlies, like friendly countries, and then they're going to use that as the basis for the final negotiations with China. I'm sure there are preliminary talks happening. They even said today, Besson said they weren't negotiating yet, but they're always parsing words, right?
Yeah.
So my guess is like they're going. What I'm feeling is like, and this is again, it could be all wrong. So just don't take it for what you paid for it. But I would say that they're going to get good deals done with these other countries and say, hey, look, we've got free trade basically with these countries where we used to have big imbalances.
Yeah.
So China, what are you going to do? I think China will land somewhere in the middle, which is kind of where they've always been.
Yeah.
But there'll be some more concessions. I don't see China going away from manipulating their currency. So if these are sticking points, then they're sticking points. But it's unsustainable for the U.S. and China. People underestimate the resilience of China, the amount of pain that they will take. They take a lot more pain than we do. The art market goes on one day, and you can see Trump's capitulating on different things to try to prop it, and it's working. Now needs to get some deals, which it sounds like he's going to have with these other countries that will help the market in general. And then I think we'll end up with something that's going to be good. I don't think it's going to be as great as he says, but it'll be good-ish. And I think that it will at least put us on a foundation where we can get back to running our businesses. And hopefully we didn't take the economy. If it goes longer, we will have a recession. You know this as well as I do. If it goes longer, no one's immune from a recession. And even the people who, might listen to this podcast who have nothing to do with e-com or whatever, people buy less insurance. People buy,
Yeah. Everything goes down.
Everything goes down. People don't buy furniture. They don't buy bed linens, but they also don't get their hair done as often or their car fixed. So recessions are bad. And they're really, really playing a game of chicken right now. That's super dangerous. But like I said, I say 90 days tops, from start to finish before they at least have some deals in principle.
We'll release this after this all happens, so you'll look like a prophet. And if it doesn't happen the way you said, we'll just cut it out. So
okay,
we'll just
that's my guess. That's my guess. Yeah. I mean, they could come back and it could be the greatest deals of all time.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think you're right for sure. I actually have a friend who was talking to a guy from Hong Kong, billionaire, just on Friday. And his point was, he's like, I flew over the LA ports. They're dead. Nothing's happening.
Right.
And he's like, if you fly over the ports in China right now, crazy activity. He's like, I'm sending a ship on Monday. This was last week. He said, I'm sending a ship on Monday. I guarantee you I won't pay tariffs on it.
Whoa.
He's like, it'll be done in 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe he's right. Maybe he's wrong. But I think you're right. Like it can't go on forever. And I think what really is the goal is, one of the problems is I think, and this is not political, this is just my opinion, but I think the administration has multiple different approaches or reasons why they want to use tariffs. And so that's kind of hitting against each other. Like some people are like, let's do it for America first. Some people are like, let's rebalance world trade. Some people are like, let's make money off of it. And it's the same idea you said earlier. Not having that singular goal is causing problems because it's not like, okay, we're just doing it to accomplish X. Kind of everyone has their own reason to accomplish a bunch of different things. And so I think that's causing some challenges and difficulties. Again, that might be different, but I think it's definitely rebalancing some things and getting people to say, okay, we're willing to come to the table. You're definitely, I've got a lot of connections who are saying like, everyone's coming to the table. Any of this like posturing, like we don't care, we'll fight to the, China might fight to the end. Canada's not going to fight to the end. Canada's talking a bunch of BS. Like they're in the background trying to solve it.
Everybody wants that deal.
Yeah,
that Gambly's taking, right? But the question is like you said, like there's a lot of things in the economy that can't break in the time of doing all this. We had a regional banking crisis like a year and a half ago. You remember? Yeah. Silicon Valley Bank went down, and like we were asking questions like, is our money safe at X bank? You know,
Yeah.
and those kinds of things happen. It's like the fire alarms all go off everywhere. The market starts tanking, crashing, and then it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. People pull back their spend, jobs
Yep.
start getting lost, and then you have real problems in the economy. So, like I said, if it's short term, and a short term, I would say 90 days is short term. That's the
Yeah.
shortest.
Yeah.
That's as long as it could be. Then I think that like they could pull off something that where it's on paper better than it was. I
Yeah.
just don't know if you can really force all these countries to adhere to it, especially beyond a Trump term. But you know, it's worth a try.
Yeah.
You know, it's worth a try. And like I said, for me, I'm like, I hate it. You know, I hate this whole experience. I think it sucks. But you know, we've got redundancy in our supply chain outside of China. I met with a couple of politicians, one of our senators, and I met with one of our congressmen to talk about this before Liberation Day, where I was asking them. I was just telling them like, hey, just FYI, like the tariffs, they're going to really hurt small business here where we're at in Utah, and even worse abroad, and that blame is going to be placed squarely on the feet of conservative people, right? Because that support or don't stand up against it. And so I was asking them if they thought, and again, this is not a political statement, it's just talking about trying to protect jobs, right? I was asking them what they thought was going on, like what's the impetus behind why they're doing all this. And they did this, they rattled off the same stuff that we're hearing, which is a big, you know, mess of like, it's to bring back manufacturing, but not simple manufacturing, but only high tech manufacturing. But yes, if we can bring back simple, we'll take simple. But we're not going to give you guys the same grants that we're giving TSMC and Apple and Nvidia. And then other people are saying, hey, it's just a raise to cover the tax cuts that are coming, or they're not really tax cuts; they're actually tax extensions. And then it's just this big mess where you're like, Besant has come out and he's actually made a clear case, which is it's this three-legged stool, which is like they want to cut taxes, they want to cut fraud, waste, and abuse. They want to rebalance trade, and I guess there is a fourth one, which is get rid of regulation that's holding back building in America and that kind of thing. And you're like, that kind of makes sense, but you're trying to get it done in like a few months, the first year, because they have midterms coming up just after that. So again, like it's a huge gamble. Trump's taking it unilaterally by himself, and I hope it works because we're all involved, right? Like we're all going to suffer, not just our businesses, but the people who work with us, and then all the people who maybe aren't. It's the recession environment is not as fresh in their memory.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is what's hard. You know, we're outside of politics, but just I think we were, from an economic standpoint, being told like, oh, everything's great the last 2 years, and it didn't feel great. Like it didn't feel like things were awesome. My opinion is I think we were in a recession. I think we have been in a war with China. We're in an economic war with China. We get our stuff knocked off all the time. We can't do anything about it. We can't sue. There's no accountability. So I think there are real problems. It's hard stuff to solve, but I think from the e-com world, your advice of like, it's be prepared and be nimble and agile. Because even when you said Silicon Valley Bank, I was like, dude, I totally forgot about that. Like the last 5 years have been so insane.
I know. Yeah.
Silicon Valley Bank, like one of the biggest regional banks, huge impact in the tech and entrepreneurial space, went under, and I like totally forgot about it.
A bunch of other banks too were like losing deposits and having bank runs, like it was the Great Depression. So the fragility of the economy is like can't be overstated. And that's what happened in 2008, right? Like literally the whole financial system came grinding to a halt over subprime mortgages, people buying homes that were too big for them. And so like it triggered an insurance crisis with AIG and reinsurers. So like, if you know history, you know, empires don't last because they get fat and then they take huge chances they shouldn't take and they get into debt. And you're looking at all this stuff with the US and you're like, yeah, so we need to make some adjustments. We need to fix some things. and you're like, this is a really wild approach. Like, to do it in this short period of time, if it works, I'll be so stoked. Like, I'll be so happy it worked, and we'll be able to move on. But that's what I'm hoping for. I'm always rooting for success. I want everyone to succeed, and as long as the economy does well, we'll all do well. And if not, we're prepared, to ride it out. So that's
Yeah.
that's try to stay optimistic.
I love it. No, that's one of the things that's fun talking to you. You really want everyone to succeed. So,
Ew.
as we wrap up, would love to hear about something you're reading that you would recommend to people, and then how can people follow you, learn more about you, connect with you?
I'm reading a lot of news right now, so
Yeah.
I'm reading every piece of news. I read most major news publications, and I spend some time on X. But I'm reading a lot of news publications. I actually was reading a book recently about songwriting, which is kind of funny. I ran into I just something I do on the side, but I just like to play guitar, right? So I was just trying to get my mind on something new.
Yeah.
But but yeah, nothing too immediate that comes to mind except just a ton of news. Staying up on current events is super important, and it's funny now. I never thought that like Washington politics would have such a big part in my life, but it's important what's happening, and it has a big effect on us and the people we employ. So I'm staying up to date on that. You follow me on Twitter. I'm at Ty Howells, TyHowells, and you can see all the nice replies I make to people. I'm a nice guy on Twitter, so on X.
I love it.
Yeah, that's about it.
I love the songwriting. That's awesome. I'm always tempted by those like chord progression chart books that are
Yes.
big on Instagram right now. Maybe it's just my algo, but I'm getting hit with a lot of those, and I'm like, maybe I should buy them. They kind of
Do
look
it,
cool.
man. Yeah, it's a cathartic experience, therapy. Just getting in there and playing the guitar. It's fun.
I don't know that there's anything that makes me feel happier quicker than playing music, and it kind of gives you a quick escape. So, dude, it's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Always love talking to you, and thanks for helping us kick the podcast back off.
100%. Best of luck. Thanks a ton, Jay.
Awesome.
Okay, see you.
Okay, here, just one.